What up everyone, Shark here. Welcome back to the channel. Today I got another guide for you. This time we are going to talk about nukes in Broken Arrow, how they work, how to use them effectively, and that's it. Let's get to it. Okay, let's start by talking about the units that can use nukes and the actual weapon stats. So on the US side, there are two airplanes that can carry a nuke, the B-1B Lancer from the Airborne Specialization and the B-2 Spirit from the Special Operations Forces Specialization. In both cases, it is the same weapon. It is the B61 nuke. The price is the same at 1,000 points a pop. The nuke itself has 2,000 explosive penetration. That's enough to exceed the armor of anything in the game. The best armor in the game is the T14 Armada and the M1A3 SEP at 1,400 frontal explosive protection each. It does 666 damage. The accuracy is 50 meters. The blast radius is 700 meters. So based on this penetration and the damage rating, anything within that blast radius is going to get annihilated. There's a 50% chance to ignore cover. I really don't think that's going to apply. The trick though is that 700 meter blast radius is actually not as big as you think. So you still need to target this appropriately. It's worth noting that the US variant can be laser guided, right? So if you want to say screw that T15 Bobrs in particular, you can have your snipers laser guide the nuke from either the B2 or the B1B as it comes onto target. What we need to do though is talk about these two platforms and the differences. Obviously, if you've gone to Airborne Specialization, you'll have the Lancer available to you, and if you've gone Special Operations, you will have the B2 available to you. But if you're trying to choose between the two platforms, here is the big difference. The B1B does not have stealth, right? It has a stealth rating of 1 versus 1.75 for the B2, but it can fly low, right? And so what this means is that the B2 is visible with radar on. So I use the S300 Anti, which I think is the best AA platform for the Russians to do these calculations. At high altitude with its stealth, the B2 can be seen and shot at by the S300 at 5,142 meters. The B1B can be seen and shot at 9,000 meters, but if it flies low, that range gets knocked down to 5,125. So the B1B will give you an advantage of about 17 meters of detection when it's flying low. However, it still needs to come up to high altitude to drop the bomb. Then if you take a look at this, there's no ECM jamming on the B1B. There's 20% ECM jamming on the B2 Spirit. So I'd say if you had to choose one, the B2 is probably the most likely to actually get the bomb off with a chance of survival. The last thing I want to highlight on the US side, the resupply cost of this free fall nuke is 400 points. So if you get either one of these airplanes back to base after dropping the nuke, you'll get 600 of those points back. However, as we'll talk about later, when you're trying to determine if you should drop a nuke, you should absolutely assume that you are going to lose this aircraft and give 1,000 points back to the enemy. All right, now let's talk about the Russian side. There is only one Russian platform that can use a nuke. It is the Tu-160 from the VDV Brigade. It is a cruise missile, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but if you look at the actual weapon stats, the penetration is the same, the damage is the same, the blast radius is the same, the resupply cost is the same. So the big difference here, cruise missile can be launched from 10,000 meters away. It has slightly worse accuracy than the free fall guided bomb on the US side, 100 meter dispersion there. With the cruise missile, there are some positives and negatives, right? So obviously the chance of you getting the Tu-160 back is very high. And so you're likely going to get 400 of those points back since the missile itself costs you 600. So you launch the missile, return the Tu-160 safely back home, you'll largely be fine there. However, the cruise missile can be intercepted. So while there are some situations where you can just kind of come in and lob it right off the rip, if the enemy team is good, they've got air defense up, they've got air-to-air interceptors, this cruise missile could get knocked down. And so essentially you are paying that 600 points to accomplish nothing, which doesn't feel all that great. It's also worth noting that the Tu-160 also cannot go to low altitude and has an extremely wide turn radius. So you do need to micro this this airplane pretty aggressively to keep it back in a safe spot while you spot for the nuke, to make sure that it doesn't accidentally fly out over the battle space and get shot down. All right, now let's talk about when you would consider using nukes in Broken Arrow in a multiplayer match. The first reason that you'd use them is really for the memes, because it's a cool mechanic that you really don't see very often in video games. It provides a lot of fun reactions. There's a lot of shock value to it. You can catch your opponent totally off guard in a way that is kind of fun. So if you're playing a game with your friends, you're on stream, it is a pretty cool mechanic and something fun to see. They did a really good job in the game design with how it kind of lights up the whole screen. You hear the Geiger counter going off. So that's kind of, reason number one. If for no other reason, then it's kind of cool.
Victory nuke.
Victory nuke.
Their 1 point that they don't have yet. I expect you to cap this with your snipers.
Oh!
Nice.
2 units.
Wow.
Not worth. Not worth. Rip my KD.
Reason number two is a little bit more tactical, and that's to blunt an enemy attack, right? You could, if you see like a big enemy armored column, you could try to like move your own forces up, trade evenly, wait for 5 minutes for your own like tank column to get up to the front. But instead, if you have a well-placed nuke and you've got kind of like a team battle drill or procedure for getting it out and doing it safely, you can completely clear your opponent's deck, get all their units on cooldown, trade really well from a KD perspective, and then it opens things up for an immediate counterattack. As a general rule, if you're going to take this approach or try to accomplish this, I'd make sure you see at least 2 of your opponents blobbed up together, right? Because you want to make sure that you're going to get at least 1,000 points of value from the nuke itself. And that's not even counting any of the support that you need from your own units or from your teammates to get it off cleanly. So in that case, you see 2 or 3 enemy colors like all clustered up together, making a big push. That's a good opportunity to use a nuke. And then the third reason has to do more with like the comeback mechanic in the game. So this is really, you're getting late into a phase, especially phase 2 or phase 3. You're behind on capture points. And in this case, a nuke can be really useful in kind of cracking open the enemy's position to allow you to make a late phase push. In this case, you're almost never going to have the points to use it to support your own effort. So this is going to be, you have a teammate that's ready to make their move to try to seize 1 or 2 territory points. You identify kind of the enemy positions in general, and you bring in your nuke to smash those defenses, free up maneuver for your teammates to capture a couple of points right at the end of the phase. In this game, really good teams use entrenched team weapons, ATGM vehicles alongside armor to build these defensive positions that make it really hard to kind of push. Well, like once they're in place, it can be hard to break that open. So using a nuke to immediately smash all of that and enable some freedom of maneuver is a really viable strategy, and one that can be really dangerous if executed well. Okay, so short of flying your plane over the target, hoping for the best, or trying to rely on the B2's stealth rating, what is the actual best way to employ a nuke in Broken Arrow if you're doing it seriously and trying to smash the enemy's position against a good team with competent anti-air defenses? I would say at a minimum, you definitely need a spotted target. Even if the recon asset does get destroyed, say you put a drone overhead, it gets shot down, that's fine. You need to know where the target is that you're trying to hit. And remember that 700-meter radius is not as big as you think. So your bomb drop actually needs to be accurate. If you can laser des for it, that is obviously ideal. I'd say from there, you need an initial seed run. So you need a couple of airplanes to come in with anti-radiation missiles, trying to at least get the enemy to turn off their radars, or soak up those SAMs so they're trying to reload. Maybe you run a little bit of counter air. You put an Su-57 or an F-22 up just to dissuade the enemy's anti-air platforms from coming after your bomber. For kind of a more advanced approach, right? Aggressive team seed, right? It's a team call. You're on Discord. You're communicating. Hey, I've got a nuke, right? There's the target. I need everyone to put out their seed or their counter air aircraft. You would also see some teams running a lot of decoys or air unit spam in general. This is something one team that I played against did really, really well. We'd see a bunch of drones hit the field, and those, again, like they take up your attention, they soak up anti-air missiles, so that when the actual nuke airplane comes through, all your SAMs are reloading, or their radar is off, the nuke comes in. It's all about getting the nuke onto the target. If you've chosen the target correctly, you will get the trades that you need, but you're trying to basically ensure that that aircraft or that missile is not shot down before it actually hits. On the Russian side, This is actually even more important because that cruise missile can be intercepted. You really want to force the enemy radars to turn off. The upside is a lot of more Russian airplanes can carry the anti-radiation missiles than the American airplanes. So if you do it right and your team has a good, solid team deck build, you can have enough seed on the field to come in, threaten the US anti-air systems, and at least force them to turn their radars off. The most advanced thing that I've seen would involve some significant deception techniques as well. So there are a couple things. The simple one is to then spam conventional cruise missiles alongside the Nuke cruise missile on the Russian side. So think about having a second teammate with a Tu-160 or a bunch of the Iskanders, right, the ground-based cruise missiles. You come in, and before the Nuke cruise missile goes off, you spam conventional cruise missiles. You kind of saturate the air environment, force the enemy to spend all of its intercept capability on conventional cruise missiles that nobody really cares about. The Nuke missile gets through, it hits what it needs to hit, boom, you win. On the American side, you can also have multiple teammates with the same platform. Think about having one teammate has a B2 with just a load of 2,000-pound bombs, and the other teammate has the B2 with the Nuke. You make sure that the conventional bomb B2 makes its run first, right? The enemy sees that, they see that conventional bombing run, they think, okay, B2 with 2,000 pounders, that can hurt, but it's not a nuke. That way, they're just a little bit conditioned when the second B2 comes through and drops a nuke. They're not expecting it. They're less likely to disperse their forces or really commit to shooting it down in a way that they would if they knew it was a nuke. So just a couple of ideas there. Really, a lot of this comes down to team play. I've had some video going in the background of some teams that I think have done it really, really well. Now to wrap up, have a little case study on solid nuke employment here. Just take a look. We'll discuss it after the fact. Igla team in the woods.
I'm gonna Nighthawk this. That's for me, that ping. I'm gonna Nighthawk it.
Okay. I'm just gonna drive on him here on the flank.
Yeah, I'll just cap G for you and hold it. You just go forward.
Oh.
Or we don't do that and we
Well.
get nuked.
Well.
It looked like it worked.
That was effective.
Fuck, he got my Nighthawk.
He got everything. All my stuff's gone. Well, that's a nice little reset. I'm gonna drink some coffee and just think on my sins for a minute.
That's fine.
Sounds good.
All right. So as you saw from the look on my face, that was unexpected and extremely effective. So let's talk about why. One, the terrain on that map on Black Coast, and in particular that point G, meant that all of my units and some of my teammates' units were bottled up just kind of by default. I could have done a better job spreading them out, but I was just consolidating after capturing the point, and so that was a perfect target. Second, there was no warning because, again, of the map. The Tu-160 just coming in over the water, launching the missile. There was no air raid siren. There is no reason for me to be able to see it with radar or have air up to defend against it. So the missile just comes in from off screen about 3 seconds before it hits. Now, if I'd had pivads up there, I might have been able to knock it down, but I didn't, and the enemy knew that, so it was a perfect time to take that shot. As you saw, it was about a 3,000 point swing with a single missile. He got the Tu-160 back as well because, I mean, no one even saw the airplane. So huge trade value. I think it's a 5-to-1 destruction, 600 for the missile, 3,000 points in Abrams tanks, infantry, and SHORADs. And so when this happens to you, as I kind of did, I mean, you could tell I was a little bit in shock there. You just got to tip your cap to the opponent, reset, learn from it, and do better next time. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Please hit me up in the comments below. Let me know what I missed. What's the craziest thing you've seen your team or another team do to get a nuke off? But that's going to wrap this one, and we will see y'all in the next one.